The forest of Kareth Prime was silent. Too silent. Scout Corporal Maya Chen pressed her back against the thick trunk of a bioluminescent tree, her breath shallow and controlled. The pale blue glow from the fungal growths around her cast strange shadows across the alien landscape, but Maya had learned long ago not to let strange sights distract her from the mission. She had been on patrol for 6 hours now, moving through enemy territory with nothing but her wits and her training. The Vorax had established a forward base somewhere in this sector, and humanity needed to know exactly where. Maya was the best scout in the 42nd Reconnaissance Battalion, and that was why she had been chosen for this mission. The Vorax were hunters by nature. Their entire civilization had been built on the foundation of the hunt. For thousands of years, they had been the apex predators of their home world, and when they reached the stars, they brought that predatory instinct with them. They saw other species as nothing more than prey to be tracked, captured, and consumed. When the Vorax first encountered humanity, they had laughed. Here was a species with no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armor plating, no venom. The Vorax had expected an easy conquest. They had been very wrong. Maya heard a sound to her left. It was soft, barely louder than the wind through the alien leaves, but she caught it. The Vorax were good hunters, but Maya had grown up in the wilderness of New Montana Colony. She had been tracking animals since she could walk. She knew every sound that a forest could make, whether the forest was on Earth or 1,000 light years away. She did not move. Movement was death in the presence of the Vorax. Their eyes were designed to detect motion, and their hearing could pick up a heartbeat from 50 meters away. But Maya had trained for this. She slowed her breathing even further. She let her heart rate drop. She became as still as the tree behind her. A Vorax patrol moved past her position. There were 5 of them, each standing over 2 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that shifted color to match their surroundings. Their heads were elongated, with multiple eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Their arms ended in long claws that could tear through standard body armor like paper. Maya watched them pass. They moved with the confidence of apex predators, certain that nothing in this forest could threaten them. They did not know that Maya was there. They did not know that a lone human scout was gathering intelligence that would determine the outcome of this war. The war had been going badly for humanity at first. The Vorax had superior technology and natural weapons that made them deadly in close combat. Human soldiers died by the thousands in the first months of the conflict. The Galactic Council watched with interest, many of them expecting humanity to fall quickly. But humanity did not fall. Instead, humans did what they had always done when faced with a superior predator. They adapted. They learned. They became something that the Vorax had never encountered before. The Vorax were ambush predators. They relied on stealth and surprise to take down their prey. But humans had evolved on a planet filled with ambush predators. Lions, tigers, crocodiles, snakes. For millions of years, humans had lived alongside creatures that wanted to eat them, and they had survived. They had not just survived. They had thrived. They had become the dominant species on their planet. Maya waited until the patrol had moved far enough away, then she began to move again. Her steps were silent on the soft ground. She had spent weeks learning how to walk on this terrain, testing every type of soil and vegetation until she knew exactly where to place her feet to make no sound. Her camouflage suit was a marvel of human engineering. It did not just change color like Vorax scales. It actually absorbed and redirected light, making her nearly invisible to the naked eye. More importantly, it masked her heat signature and suppressed the electromagnetic signals that her body naturally produced. To the Vorax sensors, she was nothing more than another rock or tree. Maya reached the top of a small ridge and stopped. Below her, spread across a valley that stretched for several kilometers, was the Vorax forward base. It was larger than intelligence had suggested, much larger. She counted at least 200 structures, with dozens of vehicles and what looked like a full brigade of Vorax warriors. This was not a forward base. This was a staging area for a major offensive. Maya's training kicked in immediately. She began to catalog everything she saw, storing the information in her neural implant for later transmission. The number of troops, the types of vehicles, the defensive positions, the communication arrays, every detail could be important. She had been gathering intelligence for almost an hour when she felt it, a presence behind her. She did not turn around. She did not move at all. She simply waited. The Vorax hunter was good. It had approached from downwind, using the terrain to mask its movement. It had come within 10 meters of her position before she had detected it. Most humans would never have known it was there until its claws were in their back. But Maya was not most humans. She had two options. She could try to run, but the Vorax were faster than humans over short distances. She could try to fight, but the Vorax were stronger and had natural weapons that she could not match. Neither option seemed good. So Maya chose a third option. She stayed perfectly still. The Vorax hunter moved closer. It knew something was there. Its instincts were screaming that prey was nearby, but it could not see anything. It could not hear anything. It could not smell anything but the strange vegetation of this forest. Maya controlled her fear. Fear produced chemicals that the Vorax could detect. Fear made your heart beat faster and your breathing quicken. Fear was the enemy as much as the Vorax itself. The hunter circled her position, coming within 5 meters at its closest approach. Maya could see the confusion in its body language. It was certain that something was there, but it could find no evidence to support that certainty. After what felt like an eternity, the hunter moved away. It was not satisfied, but it had other areas to patrol. Maya waited until she could no longer sense its presence, then waited another 10 minutes just to be safe. She had survived an encounter with a Vorax hunter at close range, not through superior strength or speed or weapons, but through the oldest human survival trait of all: patience. The ability to wait, to endure, to outlast any predator that threatened her. Maya began her slow retreat from the ridge. She had the intelligence she needed. Now she just had to get it back to human lines. The fate of thousands of soldiers depended on the information in her head. The war was about to change. Maya moved through the forest like a ghost. Every step was calculated. Every movement was deliberate. She had been trained in the art of stealth since she was 16 years old, when the military scouts had identified her natural talent for moving unseen. The journey back to human lines would take her 3 days. 3 days of constant vigilance. 3 days of hiding from Vorax patrols. 3 days of surviving in hostile territory with limited supplies and no backup. It was exactly the kind of challenge that Maya had been born for. The first day passed without incident. Maya found a small cave to rest in during the brightest hours, when the Vorax were most active. She ate a small portion of her rations and drank sparingly from her water supply. Conservation was key. She could not count on finding safe water or food in this alien environment. As night fell on Kareth Prime, Maya continued her journey. The darkness was her ally. While the Vorax had excellent night vision, they were primarily visual hunters. In low-light conditions, their other senses became less reliable. Maya had studied their biology extensively and knew exactly how to exploit their weaknesses. On the second day, things became more difficult. The Vorax had increased their patrols. Maya suspected that they had noticed something wrong, perhaps a sensor that had detected her passage or a patrol that had found her tracks. Whatever the reason, the forest was now swarming with hunters. Maya found herself trapped between 2 patrol routes. She climbed a tree and waited, suspended 20 meters above the ground, while Vorax warriors passed beneath her. Her arms burned from the effort of holding her position, but she did not move. She did not make a sound. The patrols passed. Maya descended and continued her journey. Her muscles ached and her body demanded rest, but she could not stop. Every hour she delayed was another hour that the Vorax could prepare their offensive. That night she reached a river that she would need to cross. The water was cold and the current was strong. Maya knew that swimming would make noise and leave traces that the Vorax could follow. She needed another way across. She spent an hour searching the riverbank until she found what she was looking for. A fallen tree that stretched almost all the way across the water. It was not a perfect bridge, but it was good enough. Maya crawled across the trunk, moving slowly and carefully to avoid making splashes. On the other side, she found fresh Vorax tracks. A large group had passed through here recently, heading toward the human lines. Maya realized with growing horror that the offensive might already be starting. She needed to move faster. But moving faster meant making more noise. Making more noise meant being detected. Being detected meant death, not just for her but for all the soldiers who were counting on her intelligence. Maya made a decision. She would take a different route, one that would add several hours to her journey but would keep her away from the main Vorax movement. It was a gamble, but it was the only option that gave her a reasonable chance of success. The new route took her through a section of the forest that was particularly dense with vegetation. The bioluminescent plants here glowed brighter than elsewhere, creating pools of light that Maya had to carefully avoid. The undergrowth was thick and tangled, forcing her to crawl on her belly for long stretches. It was exhausting work. Maya's body was reaching its limits. She had not slept properly in over 40 hours and her food supply was running low, but she kept moving. She had to keep moving. In the early hours of the third day, Maya encountered something unexpected. A Vorax hunting party had made camp directly in her path. There were 7 of them, gathered around a small fire, speaking in their harsh, clicking language. Maya froze. There was no way around the camp without being detected. The vegetation was too thin on either side, and going back would take too much time. She would have to wait for them to leave. She found a hidden spot and settled in to wait. The minutes stretched into hours. The Vorax showed no signs of moving. They seemed to be waiting for something, though Maya could not determine what. As she waited, Maya listened to their conversation. Her neural implant had a translation program that could parse the Vorax language, though it worked slowly and made frequent errors. She caught fragments of their discussion. They were talking about humans, about how difficult humans had proven to be as prey. One of the hunters mentioned a battle where a small group of humans had held off a much larger Vorax force for 3 days, using traps and ambushes that the Vorax had never seen before. Another hunter spoke of a human soldier who had survived alone in Vorax territory for 2 weeks, evading every patrol sent to capture him. When the Vorax finally cornered him, the human had detonated explosives that killed himself and a dozen Vorax warriors. Maya felt a grim satisfaction at these stories. Humans were adapting. They were learning how to fight the Vorax on their own terms. They were becoming something that the galaxy had never seen before. The oldest hunter in the group spoke then. He said something that Maya's translator struggled to parse, but the meaning was clear. The Vorax were afraid. For the first time in their history, they had encountered a species that refused to accept its role as prey. Dawn began to break over Kareth Prime. The Vorax finally began to pack up their camp. Maya watched them prepare to leave, her body tense with anticipation. Once they were gone, she could complete her mission. But fate had other plans. One of the younger hunters walked toward Maya's hiding spot. He was not heading directly for her, but his path would bring him close enough to detect her presence. Maya had seconds to decide what to do. She could try to move away, but that would create noise. She could stay still and hope that her camouflage would hold, but the hunter would pass within 2 meters of her position. She could attack, but that would alert the entire camp. Maya chose to trust her training. She stayed perfectly still, controlling every aspect of her body. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her heart rate dropped to a level that most humans could not achieve without medical intervention. She became as invisible as any human could possibly be. The hunter passed so close that Maya could have reached out and touched him. He paused, his head tilting as if sensing something wrong. His multiple eyes scanned the area where Maya lay hidden. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the hunter shook his head and continued on his way. He had sensed something, but he could not identify what it was. Maya had survived again. She waited until the hunting party had disappeared into the forest, then began to move. The human lines were less than 10 kilometers away. She could make it before nightfall if she pushed herself. And push herself she did. Maya moved faster now, accepting greater risk in exchange for speed. Every minute counted. The Vorax offensive could begin at any moment, and the human forces needed to be warned. The last few kilometers were the most dangerous. Maya was approaching the no-man's land between the Vorax forward positions and the human defensive lines. Both sides had sensors and patrols in this area, and a single mistake could be fatal. Maya slowed her pace and increased her caution. She had come too far to fail now. The intelligence in her head was worth more than her life, and she knew it. She detected the first human sensor at the edge of a small clearing. It was well hidden, camouflaged to look like a natural rock formation, but Maya recognized the subtle signs. She gave it a wide berth, not wanting to trigger an alert that might bring a patrol running. The forest began to thin as she approached the human lines. Maya could see signs of recent fighting here. Scorched trees, craters from explosions, the faint smell of burnt chemicals that lingered in the air. She found a human observation post hidden in the remains of a large tree. The two soldiers inside were startled when she appeared seemingly out of nowhere, but they quickly recognized her uniform and rank insignia. "Scout Corporal Chen reporting," Maya said, her voice hoarse from 3 days of silence. "I have urgent intelligence for Colonel Morrison, Priority 1. The soldiers scrambled to contact their superiors. Within minutes, Maya was being escorted to the main command post, a hardened bunker several kilometers behind the front lines. Colonel Morrison was a veteran of the Vorax War. He had been fighting these alien predators for 5 years, and it showed in the lines on his face and the gray in his hair. But his eyes were still sharp, and they widened as Maya delivered her report. "You are saying that the Vorax have assembled a full invasion force?" he asked. "Not just a forward base, but enough troops for a major offensive?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "I counted at least 5,000 warriors with heavy vehicles and artillery support. They are positioned to strike at our southern flank within the next 48 hours. Morrison turned to his tactical officers. "Show me the current deployment." A holographic map appeared above the command table. Maya pointed to the location of the Vorax base, watching as the officers updated the display with the new intelligence. The picture that emerged was grim. "If they attack through here," Morrison said, tracing a line on the map, "they will cut our supply lines and trap the 15th Infantry Division against the river. We would lose 20,000 soldiers." "We need to reposition immediately," one of the officers said. "Pull back the southern units and reinforce the center." "No," Morrison said. "If we pull back, they will know that we have discovered their plan. They will adjust their strategy and attack somewhere else." He studied the map for a long moment. "We need to use this intelligence offensively." Maya understood what he was thinking. The humans could set a trap for the Vorax, using their own tactics against them. It was exactly the kind of adaptation that had allowed humanity to survive this long against a superior foe. "They expect us to be prey," Morrison said. "They expect us to run or to stand and fight a losing battle, but we are not prey. We are humans, and humans do not play by the rules that other species expect." Over the next several hours, Morrison and his staff developed a battle plan. They would appear to be weak on the southern flank, inviting the Vorax attack. But hidden reserves would be positioned to strike at the enemy's flanks and rear once they were committed to the assault. It was a classic ambush, the same technique that the Vorax had used against humans countless times. But this time, the roles would be reversed. The predators would become the prey. Maya was given quarters to rest while the preparations began. She slept for 12 hours straight, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. When she woke, the battle was about to begin. She found an observation post with a view of the southern sector and settled in to watch. She had done her part by gathering the intelligence. Now it was up to the combat troops to turn that intelligence into victory. The Vorax attack began at dawn, just as Maya had predicted. Thousands of warriors emerged from the forest, their scales shifting to match the terrain as they advanced. They moved with the confidence of predators who expected easy prey. The human defenders on the southern flank put up a token resistance, then began a controlled retreat. To the Vorax, it must have looked like a rout. They pushed forward eagerly, sensing victory. That was when the trap closed. Hidden artillery batteries opened fire from positions that the Vorax had thought were empty. The shells were precision-guided, targeting the enemy's heavy vehicles and command units first. Within minutes, the Vorax advance was thrown into chaos. Then the reserve struck. 2 full divisions of human soldiers emerged from concealed positions, hitting the Vorax flanks with devastating force. The enemy found themselves surrounded, cut off from retreat, and facing an opponent that they had underestimated. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it was over, the Vorax invasion force had been destroyed. More than 4,000 enemy warriors lay dead on the field. Human casualties were a fraction of that number. It was the greatest victory that humanity had won against the Vorax since the war began. And it had all started with a lone scout who had evaded the predator ambush and brought back the intelligence that made it possible. Colonel Morrison found Maya at the observation post after the battle. He stood beside her for a long moment, watching the cleanup operations in the valley below. "You saved a lot of lives today, Corporal," he said finally. 20,000 soldiers who would have died if you had not completed your mission." Maya nodded. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired and sore and grateful to be alive. But she also felt something else. Pride. Not in herself, but in her species. In humanity's ability to adapt, to survive, to turn every disadvantage into a strength. "The Vorax thought they were the hunters," she said. "They forgot that humans have been dealing with predators for millions of years. We know how to survive. We know how to wait. And we know how to fight back." The news of the victory at Karath Prime spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had watched humanity's struggle with detached interest, suddenly began to pay closer attention. A species that could turn the tables on the Vorax was a species that deserved a second look. Maya was promoted to sergeant and awarded the Silver Star for her actions during the scouting mission. She stood on a stage in front of her battalion, feeling uncomfortable with all the attention. She was a scout. Her job was to be invisible, not to stand in front of crowds. But she understood why the ceremony was necessary. Humanity needed heroes, symbols that showed that victory was possible against an enemy that had seemed invincible. Maya was not sure she deserved to be that symbol, but she accepted the role anyway. After the ceremony, Colonel Morrison took her aside. "I have a new mission for you," he said, "one that could change the course of this war." Maya listened as he explained. The victory at Karath Prime had created an opportunity. The Vorax were regrouping, pulling their forces back to more defensive positions. There was a gap in their lines, a corridor that led deep into their territory. At the end of that corridor was a Vorax command center. Not just a forward base, but a strategic hub that coordinated all enemy operations in this sector. If that center could be destroyed, the Vorax war effort in this region would be crippled. "You want me to scout the approach?" Maya asked. "I want you to lead the infiltration team," Morrison replied. "You are the best stealth operative we have. You have proven that you can move through Vorax territory without being detected. Now I need you to do it again, but this time with a team of specialists." Maya considered the request. Leading a team was different from operating alone. She would be responsible for other lives, not just her own. But she also knew that Morrison was right. This mission required someone with her skills. "I will need to select my own team," she said. "People I have trained with, people I trust." Morrison nodded. "You will have whatever resources you need. This mission has the highest priority." Maya spent the next week assembling her team. She chose 6 soldiers, each of them an expert in stealth operations. There was Sergeant James Park, a demolitions expert who could create explosions that looked like accidents. Private Elena Rodriguez, a tech specialist who could disable any security system. Corporal David Okonkwo, a sniper who could eliminate targets from a kilometer away. Private First Class Lin Wei, a medic who had trained with the Scout Corps. Specialist Marcus Johnson, a communications expert who could intercept and decode Vorax transmissions. And Private Yuki Tanaka, a close-quarters combat specialist who had survived hand-to-hand fights with Vorax warriors. They trained together for 2 weeks, practicing formations and procedures until they could move as a single unit. Maya pushed them hard, knowing that any weakness could get them all killed. The Vorax were formidable enemies, and this mission would take them deeper into hostile territory than any human team had ever gone. The night before the mission began, Maya gathered her team for a final briefing. She looked at each of them in turn, seeing the determination in their eyes. "This will be the most dangerous mission any of us have ever undertaken," she said. "The Vorax will be hunting for us from the moment we cross into their territory. If we are detected, we will not receive any support. We will be on our own." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I have seen what the Vorax can do. I have watched them hunt humans like animals, and I have also seen what humans can do when we refuse to be prey. We are smarter than they expect. We are more patient. We are more adaptable, and we are going to use those advantages to strike a blow that will change this war." The team nodded. They were ready. The infiltration began at midnight. Maya led her team through the gap in the Vorax lines, moving with the careful precision that she had perfected over years of training. Each step was silent. Each movement was calculated to avoid detection. The first challenge came on the second day. A Vorax patrol stumbled across their path, forcing the team to hide in a narrow ravine for 8 hours. They lay motionless, barely breathing, while the patrol searched the area. Maya watched the Vorax hunters move back and forth, coming close enough to touch at several points. But the team held their discipline. No one moved. No one made a sound. The patrol eventually moved on, never knowing how close they had come to discovering the human infiltrators. On the 4th day, they reached the outer perimeter of the Vorax command center. It was a massive structure, built into the side of a mountain. Dozens of buildings surrounded the main complex, with hundreds of warriors patrolling the grounds. Maya studied the defenses through her scope. The Vorax had constructed multiple layers of security, with sensors and guard posts covering every approach. A direct assault would be suicide. Even a stealth approach seemed impossible. But Maya had not come this far to give up. She spent a full day observing the Vorax routines, looking for patterns and weaknesses. She noted the timing of patrol changes. She identified the blind spots in the sensor coverage. She watched the vehicles that entered and left the complex. And she found what she was looking for: a supply convoy that arrived every 3 days, carrying provisions for the garrison. The vehicles were inspected, but the inspections were routine. The guards were looking for large-scale threats, not for humans hidden in small spaces. Maya gathered her team and explained the plan. They would intercept the convoy before it reached the complex, hide inside the cargo containers, and let the Vorax carry them past the outer defenses. Once inside, they would proceed to the command center, plant the explosives, and escape before detonation. It was a bold plan, with many opportunities for failure, but it was also their best chance of success. The team moved into position on the convoy route. They found a narrow section of the road where the vehicles would be forced to slow down. This would give them a few seconds to board the convoy and hide before the Vorax drivers could react. When the convoy appeared, Maya gave the signal. The team moved with perfect coordination, boarding 3 separate vehicles and disappearing into the cargo compartments. The entire operation took less than 15 seconds. The convoy continued on its way, carrying the human infiltrators deep into the heart of the enemy complex. Maya lay hidden among crates of supplies, her heart beating steadily despite the danger. They had passed the first barrier. Now came the hard part. The convoy stopped inside the Vorax compound. Maya heard the heavy footsteps of guards moving past her hiding spot, heard their harsh voices as they checked the vehicles. She held her breath, waiting for the alarm that would signal their discovery. But the alarm never came. The inspection was as routine as she had predicted. After a few minutes, the guards moved on, and the convoy drivers began unloading the cargo. Maya waited until the unloading was complete and the area had quieted before signaling her team. One by one, they emerged from their hiding spots and gathered in the shadows of a storage building. Everyone had made it through the first phase. The command center was located at the heart of the complex, built into the mountain itself. Maya led her team through the shadows, using the intelligence they had gathered to avoid patrol routes and sensor coverage. They moved slowly, covering only a few hundred meters per hour, but they moved without being detected. The entrance to the command center was guarded by 2 Vorax warriors. They stood at attention, their eyes scanning the surrounding area. There was no way to approach them without being seen. Maya signaled to David Okonkwo, her sniper. He moved into position, his weapon equipped with a silencer that would reduce the sound of his shots to a whisper. At Maya's command, he fired twice. Both guards fell without making a sound. The team moved quickly to the entrance. Elena Rodriguez went to work on the door controls, her fingers dancing over the alien interface. Within seconds, she had disabled the security system and opened the door. Inside, the command center was a maze of corridors and chambers. Maya relied on the schematic that intelligence had provided, leading her team toward the central operations room where the main command systems were located. They encountered 3 more guards along the way. Each time, the guards were eliminated silently before they could raise an alarm. Yuki Tanaka proved especially valuable, taking down 2 Vorax in close combat with movements so fast and quiet that the aliens died before they knew they were under attack. The central operations room was larger than Maya had expected. Dozens of Vorax officers worked at control stations, monitoring screens that showed the disposition of forces across the entire sector. If this room was destroyed, the Vorax would lose the ability to coordinate their armies effectively. James Park began setting the explosives while the rest of the team provided security. He worked methodically, placing charges at structural points that would maximize the damage. The explosives were designed to look like a power overload, so the Vorax would not immediately suspect human sabotage. Maya watched the clock on her display. They had been inside the complex for 4 hours. Every minute increased the risk of discovery. She urged Park to work faster, but the demolitions expert refused to rush. A mistake now could trigger a premature explosion or, worse, leave the charges inactive. Finally, Park signaled that the charges were set. The timer was programmed for 30 minutes, giving them time to escape before the explosion. Maya gathered her team and began the retreat. But fate had other plans. As they approached the exit, an alarm suddenly sounded throughout the complex. Someone had discovered the dead guards. Within seconds, the corridors were filled with Vorax warriors, searching for the intruders. Maya made a split-second decision. "Split up," she ordered. "3 teams of 2, rendezvous at the extraction point." The teams separated, each pair taking a different route through the complex. Maya paired with Lin Wei, the medic. They moved through the shadows, evading patrol after patrol. But the Vorax were everywhere now, and the net was closing. They came within sight of the outer wall when a Vorax hunting pack spotted them. The aliens let out a triumphant cry and charged. Maya and Lin Wei ran, but the Vorax were faster. They were going to be caught. That was when David Okonkwo proved why he was the best sniper in the battalion. From a position on the outer wall that he had somehow reached undetected, he opened fire. His shots were precise, deadly. 3 Vorax fell before the rest realized where the fire was coming from. Maya and Lin Wei used the distraction to escape over the wall. They found Okonkwo waiting for them, along with the other 4 members of their team. Everyone had made it out. "We need to move," Maya said. "The charges will detonate in 15 minutes." They ran through the forest, putting as much distance between themselves and the complex as possible. Behind them, the Vorax were organizing pursuit teams, but they were too slow. The humans had a head start, and they were not going to lose it. Exactly 30 minutes after Park had set the timer, the explosives detonated. The mountains shook with the force of the blast. A massive fireball rose into the sky, visible for kilometers in every direction. The Vorax command center had been completely destroyed. Maya watched the explosion from a safe distance, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. They had done it. Against all odds, a team of 7 humans had infiltrated the heart of the Vorax military machine and destroyed it. The journey back to human lines took 5 days. They encountered several Vorax patrols, but the enemy was disorganized now, operating without central coordination. It was easy for the team to evade them. When they finally crossed into friendly territory, they were greeted as heroes. The destruction of the command center had thrown the Vorax forces into chaos. Human armies across the sector were advancing, capturing territory that had been lost years ago. The war was not over. The Vorax still had forces in other sectors, and they would eventually recover from this blow. But the momentum had shifted. Humanity was no longer the prey. The Galactic Council sent representatives to observe the human offensive. They were impressed by what they saw. A species that had seemed destined for extinction was now winning against one of the most dangerous predator races in the galaxy. One of the representatives, an elderly being from a species that had been conquered by the Vorax centuries ago, sought out Maya after a briefing. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do humans fight against such a powerful enemy?" Maya thought about the question for a long moment. "The Vorax see themselves as the ultimate hunters," she said finally. "They think that gives them power over other species, but they forgot something important. Humans were never just prey, we were survivors. We lived alongside predators for millions of years and we learned from them. We learned patience. We learned cunning. We learned how to turn our weaknesses into strengths." She looked out at the distant battlefield where human soldiers were securing another victory. "The Vorax thought they were hunting us. They did not realize that we were hunting them too, and humans are very, very good at hunting." The representative nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. Humans were not powerful because of strength or speed or natural weapons. They were powerful because they refused to accept their place in the natural order. They took the rules that other species lived by and bent them to their own advantage. Maya was promoted again after the mission, becoming the youngest captain in the Scout Corps. She continued to lead stealth operations against the Vorax, her name becoming legend among both human soldiers and alien observers. The scout who could not be seen. The ghost who walked through enemy territory and brought back victory. The war lasted another 2 years. When it finally ended, the Vorax had been driven back to their home territory. They were not destroyed, but they were contained, no longer a threat to the rest of the galaxy, and they had learned something that they would never forget. Humans were not prey. Humans were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, not because of their technology or their weapons, but because of who they were. Survivors, adapters, the species that looked at impossible odds and found a way to win anyway. And it had all started with a lone scout who evaded the predator ambush. A single human who used stealth and patience and determination to gather the intelligence that turned the tide. Maya Chen, the ghost of Kareth Prime, whose actions ensured humanity's triumph. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they overcame. And when the galaxy tried to make them prey, they became the hunters instead. Humanity, the species that refused to die.